sant yàlla.
looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay te nag doo ci yokku dara.
Jar Oil, the company, have filling stations across the country, and our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market.
In the Gambia, we all move to different paces. Time is money, convenience is power, and now both are in your hands. No more long lines, no more late payments, no more missed chances. Not anymore. Because now the Gambia has its own super app, Zap. One app, one tap, endless convenience. Send money instantly, pay your bills in seconds, shop without borders, pay your rides, order your meal, buy your ticket, deposit and withdraw money for absolutely free. No extra charges, no hidden fees, only on Zap Super App. This is not just convenience. This is confidence. This is the future in your hands. And the best part, Zap is born right here. Built for us, designed for every Gambian home, every Gambian dream. So don't wait in the past. Step into the future. Download Zap today on App Store and Play Store and enjoy endless free services. Call us today on our toll-free number 1666 or on 260-0001. Zap, all in one, all for you. Tap in, zap in.
It's Monday, the 15th of December 2025. We are 10 days only away from Christmas. I hope you're looking forward to a great celebration. It's coffee time with Peter Gomez. We're live on 92.1 on the FM band to Gambians across the country and online to Gambians both at home and in the diaspora. www.wcr.gm. It's 13 minutes past 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday, the 15th of December, as I said. And we're joined now by Dr. Ousman Gagigo, economist, researcher, and now political party founder. Dr. Gagigo has been one of the most outspoken critics of the Barrow administration, its economic policies, particularly on cement and energy, and his analyses have sparked wide debate across the country. With his recent decision to establish a new political party ahead of the 2026 presidential election, he steps from the world of economic commentary into the political arena. So we'll be exploring his views on the Gambian economy and government policy before turning to his motivations and visions for politics. Dr. Gagigo, it's good to have you back.
Thank you for having me
In our studios.
Yeah, thank you.
Am I looking at a potential president in 2026?
I hope so. Indeed.
We'll talk about politics later on. But starting, as I said, with the economy of the Gambia, if you were to sum it up, what state would you say our economy is in right now?
Unfortunately, I mean, while I would be, I would be delighted. I would have been delighted to say something very, very positive. Unfortunately, I mean, what I can say to sum it up is like in a sorry state.
Oh dear.
Yes, it's in a sorry state.
And why? We just had a budget that is naturally talked up by the government.
Yeah.
But you're saying we are in a sorry state.
No, we are. I mean, you just have to look at the current situation we are in. We are in a situation where we have the cost of living is very high. Affordability of basic commodities, it's a problem for the average Gambian.
Yeah, I know how the information minister, will respond to that.
I have no doubt
Every
about
country
it.
is grappling with a cost of living challenge.
Yeah, well, the degrees are quite different, and countries are in different setup. You can talk about the situation where you say a cost of item is the same here as in Senegal, but our incomes similar. When incomes are drastically different, then you cannot just compare commodity cost. The other issue you can talk about, say, commodity prices are increasing everywhere. The price of rice is increasing everywhere. But as I pointed out before, you have a situation where over the past, from the moment Adam Barrow came to power to the present, the increase on an annual basis of rice is 10% per year in the Gambia, and it's only 6% globally. That is a huge difference on an annual basis. If you were to put money in an account, and you have such difference in interest rate, the amount you'll have at the end would be very, very different. So the idea that the suggestion by government officials that other similar things are happening there, it doesn't really begin to really grapple the extent of the problems we have here, because yes, things are happening, but the degrees are very different here. And you are talking about the situation in the country here where we have a poor country. We came from 22 years of dictatorship where the economy pretty much cratered. So to compare, to say that we have comparable situation as other countries, like even our neighbor here, Senegal, it's just not a serious position to take.
Well, there are measures we hear Senegal has taken that we would be very happy to see our government, also replicate here. We hear that the price of energy has been cut, plus, other expenditure on the Senegalese taxpayer that has been, lightened on them.
I mean, this is I think that's a very illustrative example, because basically you have a government here that is very clear about their priority, like whose welfare is being prioritized in the country more than anything. If you're talking about energy, if you're talking about food, the priority is not the interests of the few producers who are already well off. The priority is the welfare of the average Gambian, the overwhelming majority of the citizens. So a government that actually cuts the cost of energy is a government that's thinking about energy resilience, energy solutions for the majority of its citizens, which is the opposite of what we have here. We have a government that is, poorly implementing energy projects that have been poorly sequenced, and they have been poorly financed. At the end of the day, we have very little energy security, low supply of energy, highly unreliable. At the same time, we have a huge debt burden that we have to struggle to even, settle parts of it, even after the next generation.
Energy and cement, as I said in the intro, are two areas that you have been particular about and, have written a lot on.
Yes.
But government tells us that this budget, the 2026 budget, which has just been passed in the National Assembly, seeks to address the cost of living crisis. You must have, gone through the budget, given, the debate around it. Does it really respond to the taxpayers' yearning for an easing, of the cost of living crisis?
Absolutely not. I mean, first of all, the Gambian budget, the first thing anyone has to, understand about it is the lack of credibility.
It lacks credibility.
In the sense that a budget is basically a government plan of what it's going to do, like what it expects to raise in terms of revenues and its expenditures. But one thing that has been clear about the Gambia budget is the implementation of what they say they will do and what is actually done differs significantly. If you look, in 2025, from January to now, and look at what has been spent, in what sequence across the various sectors, and compare that to the budget of 2025, there is a big difference, and it's consistently has been like that over the years. So that's what I mean by budget credibility. So this is why whatever the government presents, it has to be taken with a grain of salt. There is very little credibility, in the sense that what they say they will do and what they actually end up doing are two different things. This second part also is you have a clear lack of prioritization. If you want to address something like cost of living, the allocation of resources within the budget will be very different from what it is right now. The sector that should be clearly prioritized should be agriculture. The thing about prioritizing agriculture is that, if you look at our current challenges right now, things like food security, things like employment, agriculture addresses this directly. But beyond that, it also sets the stage for addressing challenges in other sectors. Currently, inflation is a problem. Cost of items is the exorbitant cost of items are a problem.
Well, the argument from central bank is inflation has almost been tackled to the point where the central bank always wants it. It always aims for a 5% inflation. We are now down, to 7.2?
Well, the issue right now is you have inflation is not just something it's something that is constantly changing. You have to look at it over time. So currently, yes, and for the average Gambian, the food inflation is still very high. So inflation has different components. So yes,
that's the complexity of inflation. They
Exactly.
tell you just because you go to the shop and buy bread at a rising price daily does not necessarily mean that inflation is also galloping as
Yes.
what you're paying for bread on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it confuses people like us because when you hear inflation is coming down, you think, well, the cost of living also comes down.
No, it means it's actually increasing. It means the rate of increase of prices may have slowed, but it means the prices are still increasing.
Yeah.
So even at 7.2%, it means that the price of your items that you are buying,
If it was rising at 10% before, it will now only rise at 7.2.
yeah, that
Okay.
rate of increase has gone down, but it means it's still going up. Yeah, but so let's look at what is the cause of inflation. The thing is that we have persistent trade deficit. We import far more than we export. Currently, the deficit that we have, the trade deficit, is at its highest since this country has been founded.
Yeah, I think the import bill for the first 9 months of the year, we're told 2025 was $1 billion.
Exactly.
Whereas our exports were only 300 million.
Exactly. So we're talking about almost close to $700 million of deficit. What that does is that this persistent deficit, because you then have to look for this foreign currency, puts a depreciation pressures on your currency constantly. But since, almost all our commodities, we import them, there are some things we import, we have no choice but to import, like cement, like oil. But something like rice, which is our second biggest import item, we have no excuse importing it.
I have existed in this country when we consume more local rice than imported rice.
Currently, we consume our rice consumption. 90% of what we consume is imported. Only 10% is produced. You can tackle that directly in the budget through investments in by making so you have a high development expenditures in your budget as opposed to high recurring expenditures. But if you look at this budget, it has been like that throughout since this government came to power. The problem is that you have misallocation of resources. You have sectors that have high allocations when they should have little, like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, like State House. In fact, this year they tried to play a little game in the budget.
How?
By splitting the in the line, there's a new line that they have for the Office of Vice President versus Office of the President. When traditionally, throughout until last year, there's one line for State House.
They should be commended. At least there's some transparency here. At least it gives us an idea of how much goes into the office of the vice president and how much goes into the office of the president. Whereas in the past, it was all lumped into one sum, and basically it was office of the president. And OP could do whatever it want, even though you had a vice presidency.
You could say that, but in the budget breakdown, it's always possible to see what was going into the office of the vice president.
Oh, okay.
Now, the reason why I think a game is being played here is that there's a lot of commentary before on how much the allocation to the State House was so big, relative to, let's say, the National Assembly or the Judiciary. So if you were to look at the budget this year without being aware that a separate line has been created for the office of the vice president, you could have come away with the wrong conclusion that the allocation to the State House has fallen down by $300 million. When that is not the case. In fact, the allocation to the State House has actually increased beyond what it was. In fact, it has consistently increased. In fact, the allocation to the State House is more than the State House alone is more than the allocation to the National Assembly and the Judiciary combined. It doesn't make any sense that the State House...
And these are co-equal branches of government.
Exactly.
With the executive.
When you have all other ministries and sectors, why should you have such a huge expenditures, such a huge number of offices that are artificially created and inflated every single year with advisors who have no portfolios, who spend more time at the Senegambia restaurants than at the State House?
Senegambia restaurant?
Oh, I run into them there all the time. Yeah. So
they spend more time eating
there
than advising the president.
I really don't know what some of them are doing. So so the budget here, the idea that the budget has been structured in a way to address our pressing problems, it's obviously far from reality. First of all, what is promised is not delivered. That's what I mentioned about lack of credibility. Number two, there is misallocation in the sense that you have sectors that are not productive, that are not delivering, like outsized allocation to the State House, outsized allocation to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a very inflated security sector budget. When you have only relatively small, relative to their importance, very small allocations to key sectors like agriculture, to key sectors like education and health. So when you have such a situation, and at the same time, the government is constantly taking loans that have to be financed. So you have
They claim, though, that the loans they are now taking are concessionary loans.
Well,
loans that come at maybe 1%, 2%, and spread over...
But let me
very long period.
Well, let me give an example of a concessionary loan that this government has taken where the loan achieved nothing, even if the interest rate is 1%. In fact, you can even get a grant and then completely waste the money. What is the point of that grant?
What's that example?
Yeah. Here is an example. The government recently took a loan from the African Development Bank for $500 million for what? Rice cultivation in URR and CRR. That contract was given to whom? Abubakar Jawara, an associate of the president, very close associate of the president. The man has no expertise in agricultural land development.
Does he have to have any? He's a businessman. Does he have to have expertise?
No, the company.
Can't he hire experts like you with the requisite expertise, to execute this project successfully?
That's what I mean. Like, he doesn't have to do it himself. He has to go and subcontract it. But as long as he got the contract, he's responsible for finding the right expertise.
Yes.
But what happened was that the work was given, the people who actually did the work had no idea what they were doing. Not only did they not fail to do, they actually, it's not like the work was partially done. They actually destroyed the rice fields.
Oh.
I went there. I recently had a post on this on Facebook where I actually brought pictures. If you go there, you'll see all of the pictures. And I actually published this in some of the newspapers. The building that was supposed to house the pumping station is not even completed. No roof, not even the pillars. The canal system, the dikes, all of these ditches, these were not done, completely destroyed. Those people used to be able to farm an area of 1 kilometer by 500 meters, about 50 hectares. But after this project was done, they cannot even farm a fraction of it because the land was so destroyed during what was supposed to be the development. You have some areas that are elevated, there is no water standing there, and others that are so deep you can't even walk. The ditch system that has been dug around the area now is a death trap for animals. During the rainy season, on a weekly basis, livestock drown there. This is a project where the government received $500 million, and we have to pay
$500 million, not dollars.
Dollars. About at the time, given the exchange rate, it was around $7 million. But this could have
$7 million or $7 billion?
No, $7 million US dollars. That translates to around $5 million.
Wow.
Yeah, $500 million dollars. Yes.
Okay.
But this is a concessionary loan. Yes, we'll be paying over a 30-year period. The interest rate may be low, but still it is a burden that we have to repay, and the future generation will have to pay because 30 years is a whole generation. So is there any point to saying that that's a concessionary loan when the money is not actually being put to good use? So not only did you not improve rice cultivation, but you actually destroyed, you took it years back, and a new loan, by the way, is now being taken to go back to the same land. And the company that...
Go back to the same land?
The same land again.
With the same contract partner?
Well, I don't know whether the same contractor will do it,
okay.
But all I know is what consequences has he faced? As far as I know, he has faced no consequences for it. He still has the same close relationship with this president, and he's still being given very preferential treatment across all sorts of sectors. So the idea that they are getting concessional loans, doesn't really address the problem when the resources that are being taken in the name of the country are being misused and political patrons are benefiting at the expense of ordinary Gambians. You go to that village, and I had a meeting with the whole community, and the people to this day are completely incensed, and justifiably so, for the fact that they would have been able to live with the fact that the project didn't come. Mm-hmm. But what it did now, it set them back. So what they used to cultivate, what the amount of land that they were able to cultivate, now they are even able to cultivate less. Yeah. So, but this is just one example. Loans for energy sector, same situation. We have taken loans to pay back, payments we are making to, energy companies when our energy situation is getting worse. So where is the value of
You can't argue that now, though. I mean, okay, these past 2-3 days, it's been terrible. but before that, the energy supply had somehow stabilized, over a considerable, length of time. Because I think we've gone, 2-3 months without, that many interruptions. Well, let me speak for the area where I live.
The area where you live, yes. But, think about it. We talk about, you see, this is the downside of when you've been in a problem so long.
Yes.
That a slight improvement.
I understand.
Yeah.
I agree. Even losing power for 5 minutes is 5 minutes too long. Yeah. I mean, because we travel.
Yes.
And we've been to not necessarily first world countries. We've been to countries that are supposedly in the third world, like we are.
I mean, I spent years in Ivory Coast. It's rare. I mean, I spent years there, and the number of times you have outages, I could count on my hands.
Yeah, sure.
In this
absolutely, absolutely. While we are on the subject of the budget, you would have noticed that the National Assembly was very happy to cut in some areas, but only to add to its own budget. I mean, we have to talk about this National Assembly, haven't we?
No, we need to. This is why when we talk about change, it's not, I always reiterate this point. The change is not just removing Adam Barrow in the next election. The change is far broader and far deeper than that. National Assembly members, this is a problem. This example that I gave, for instance, in the case of agriculture,
yes,
that who should have been bringing this case to the public? The National Assembly member for Woolly West. But up to this day, this case has not, that individual, in fact, has not been going to that location. But more to a point directly, the National Assembly, we need to hold them to the same standard as the executive.
It's becoming too expensive for the taxpayer. I mean, just it's like every budget, they have some new input that is a cost on the tax. I mean,
and some perks for them.
We are weary taxpayers.
Indeed. So, of course, you have some excellent members of the National Assembly, but by and large, when we talk about the change, when we talk about change such that norms, certain norms that have been the case over there, that needs to change, the way we think about problems. This change is not only in the executive, even in the National Assembly. We have a situation where, certain, perks that they are giving themselves or areas that should get absolute scrutiny.
I'm glad with the way you're putting it. These are things that they give themselves. They don't come to us to ask us whether they should get those perks. Exactly. Just because they can sign on the dotted line, they vote things for themselves and, impose it on the taxpayers. I'm sure if we were to ask what we think of the allowances, the roaming allowances and all that, we will all say no to them.
Exactly. Or at the very least, have a situation where there is a robust discussion so that the citizenry, the people know what is actually happening. So at the end of the day, if you are going to sign, you sign knowing that the consequence is that now the citizen have a very good understanding of where their resources are being allocated, what areas the National Assembly is prioritizing. Because there are a lot of those resources that could be better spent. But what is so disturbing sometimes is that while there will be some robust discussion on particular issues, in some of these issues that are far more questionable, they are quickly rushed through the process and we only read about it.
They make the decisions.
Yes.
They make the decisions. I mean, they have oversight over everybody else. Nobody has oversight on the National Assembly.
Exactly.
So that's why they can, get away with murder, if you like.
On theory, we have oversight over them by to vote them in and out.
Do we understand that? That's the issue. Do we have that understanding?
And this is why the media and the civil society. I mean, I think a lot of people who are bringing this issue is very important, because in order for the citizens to exercise their oversight rules, by rewarding and punishing these National Assembly members, they need to get the understanding and the information, and hopefully these sort of questions will make that more likely.
All right. So we discussed the executive a lot. A lot of focus is on President Barrow and what he does. Occasionally we speak about the National Assembly, as we have just done. Who talks about the judiciary? I don't hear much talk around the judiciary. And they are co-equal, partners in government.
Indeed.
But who talks about them? They just also,
not much.
Had a huge, pension and pay package,
absolutely,
approved for them. But who talks about the judiciary?
No, I've definitely been on record saying that was, I think, mistaken. I mean, the judiciary is not a special. It's special in the way,
not a sacred cow.
Exactly. It's not special, more special than the executive. Or let's say a group of teachers, people in the education sector. But sometimes that's the impression people want to give. But we need to talk about that. And, there are rulings that have been made that need to be a bit more progressive. I personally took a case to the Supreme Court a few years back. I financed with my own money about military checkpoints. Why do we still have that? Of course, a literal interpretation of the Constitution probably allows it, but I think, something a bit more progressive, I hope, would have put a bit of constraints on things like that. So I'll fault the Judiciary, the Supreme Court, for siding with the government in maintaining. In fact, not only have they maintained the military checkpoints that are there, but they've actually increased since the time I filed my case. But yeah, I think that special package that has been given to them, I think it's a mistake. Not that I'm against the idea of the Supreme Court or the judiciary being rewarded. I actually feel that they need to get more investment. Look at the courthouse in Farafenni. Have you been there?
No.
Most of the time, the goats and animals are hanging out there.
Maybe they are the criminals to be tried. What would I say? I wouldn't hang out there. So if the goats and the whatever,
it's just a poorly kept facility maintained. Some other courthouses, the one in Basse, is probably kept in a far better condition. But by and large, these are areas where you're going to have important adjudications. People need to have, those physical infrastructures. The appropriate investments must be done there.
You're just justifying why maybe they need the hefty, budget that was approved for them.
What was approved for them what I have a problem with is their compensation for that to be done on a separate case, rather than part of a broader reform of compensation for any public official. So you cannot just go and say, we're going to have a certain pay structure for one sector. See, this is all, when the budget is being done, it's done for the whole country, all sectors combined. So if you want to do something that is sustainable and well thought out and within the ability of the country, that also speaks to the nation's priorities, it has to be done together. So when you do something very, just for the judiciary, it becomes
something exclusive.
financially it may be mistaken, but also you give this impression that it is somehow judges obviously do a good judges, magistrates, a high court, whoever works in the judiciary. I mean, this is an important part of the country's work, important part of democracy. They need to be well compensated, but so does the other sectors. So these things have to be done together. You know, and I think, you know, this mistake, you know, originated, you know, you've seen attempts at it since the CRC, when you had people who were in the Judiciary.
Constitutional Review Commission.
Exactly. And they were, you know, pushing for very special kinds of, you know, provisions for people in the Judiciary that I felt were, you know, they were made too special.
Everybody, you know, I mean, detested that, and there was.
So this is a continuation of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to do that without, at the same time, talking about the pay structure for the health sector, like for the nurses, without for teachers, for agricultural extension workers, for essential security personnel, then it becomes a problem.
Absolutely.
It doesn't need to be, but the way it is done, it becomes a problem.
So what do you see as the biggest structural challenges facing the Gambian economy?
No, I mean, that one. So again, I'm going to, you know, talk about this until you get.
We will leave car powership,
Yes.
and you know, your observations on agricultural investment for later. But yeah, just generally speaking, so that we can just wrap up the opening segment, move into politics, come back to the economy.
Yeah. No, basically, it's just an economy that is not able to grow. And right now, so
An economy that is not able to grow specifically because these people who are there now cannot grow it, or is it an economy that no matter what you do will not grow, even if Dr. Gagigo becomes president tomorrow?
nope, is the first one. There's nothing fundamental about the Gambia that prevents it from growing. It is currently the policies and the leaderships we have that are constraining its ability to grow. Right now, the Gambian economy is driven by two things: growth in agriculture, growth in tourism sector. They are the biggest drivers of growth. But again, what drives agriculture? When there's good rain, when there's bad rain, it falls. What drives the tourism sector? Tourism arrivals. We've taken this as if they are like you know, natural phenomenon that we cannot do anything about. But why is it that today, over, you know, half a century of independence, our agriculture is still rain-fed? There is no law that says, no law of nature that shows that our agriculture has to be dependent on the amount of rainfall. In fact, what has happened is that we could have invested in irrigation, but if you look at this government's budget, the amount of allocation to irrigation is zero, pretty much. To the extent that there's anything that goes towards irrigation, we could have had something for irrigation, for instance, over the past couple of years through projects, but based on the example I provided, they didn't happen. So basically, our economy right now, as it is being managed, as it is being led, it is not undergoing any growth, principally because what we are depending on to drive the growth, which is agriculture and tourism, the right investments are not being made.